G'day guys, my name is CJ. This is the 14-inch Asus CX34 Chromebook Plus. It's a Chromebook, but Plus. So it's got to be good, right? Let's take a look. Now, Chromebooks have gotten a bit of a reputation for being the budget laptop warriors, the champions of cloud storage and simplicity. And thanks to the pandemic, with school and uni suddenly becoming a lot more online, they absolutely blew up in popularity. And it's easy to see why. They're cheap and cheerful. But they're also known to have pretty limited functionality, being just about good enough for casual word processing and a touch of YouTube, and that's about it. And that's where the whole concept of a Chromebook Plus comes from, because it's not something unique to Asus, but instead it's a title that any manufacturer can slap onto their product so long as they satisfy very specific criteria, such as 1, having 8 gigs of RAM, 2, sporting at least a 12th gen Intel chip or the equivalent AMD Ryzen, 3, have a screen with a minimum of 1080p resolution, and 4, have 128 gigs of storage as a minimum. And so Asus is trying to shake things up here with its CX34 with a Chromebook that boasts some pretty impressive specs and a unique design. So what about first impressions? The CX34 definitely stands out from the sea of silver MacBooks with its clean, white aesthetic, and it's a refreshing change. The minimalist look is also accentuated by some relatively slim bezels around the display that's briefly interrupted by that webcam with a security switch that shines a bright orange. Big fan of that. Now, the webcam itself is a 1080p camera, and well, it takes photos as you'd expect from any mid-range webcam, which is adequate for video calls, and that's about it. Now, Asus also touts military-grade durability with the laptop, but let's be real here, this thing is made of plastic, but at least it feels sturdy and solid, certainly enough for everyday use. But there's also a couple of minor design quirks. The seams around the chassis aren't the smoothest, and it is edges and angles galore, which gives a look that screams more utilitarian rather than elegance. And the keyboard deck, whilst quite comfortable to type on, can feel slightly hollow with each stroke, but that's only a minor quibble. And I do love that this laptop of this price also includes backlit keys, and it does look rather nice in low light for those who will need to burn the midnight oil. But by far and away the weakest part of this build here is the trackpad. It's decently sized, but it's spongy yet hard to click at the same time. Finger tracking is relatively accurate with multitask gestures such as 2-finger scrolling and screen swiping, but when it comes to clicking, this one intermittently had trouble accurately registering clicks, and it often took more than one go. Now perhaps this is because I'm sport using a MacBook with really clean multi-touch gestures. I just could never get used to it. Now let's talk screen. The CX34 comes with a 14-inch 1080p IPS display. Now at 250 nits, it's fine and perfectly usable indoors, but outdoor in the sun, you're gonna struggle. That being said though, colours are surprisingly decent, and it doesn't give off any weird colour casting or look washed out, something that a lot of budget laptops do. In fact, I think it worked really well for even just very casual photo editing in Lightroom, which we'll touch on a little bit later, and I never thought that accuracy was being compromised. Just don't expect the richness and vibrancy of a higher end OLED panel like the one in this video up here. Now viewing angles are good, which is pertinent because this laptop can actually fold flat to 180 degrees. Now I'm not sure who's using it like this, but it is cool nonetheless. It's also got a matte finish, which helps keep glare at bay, as you can sort of see, but it does cut into the sharpness of what you're looking at as well. But overall, I think the display is a B+. It's not going to blow anyone away, but it'll more than get the job done for everyday tasks like browsing, watching videos, working on documents, and again, that casual bit of photo editing. But when it comes to consuming content like watching videos and listening to music, the speakers unfortunately are on the weaker side. They do get quite loud, but it lacks a lot in depth and bass. Again, perfectly fine for situations like listening to lectures or participating in video calls, but it's definitely not going to blow your socks off when watching TV shows or movies. But what about performance in general? Well, unlike most Chromebooks that come with budget-friendly processors, part of the deal with the Chromebook Plus moniker is that OEMs need to offer a more powerful CPU and RAM configuration. And this is true with the CX34 as well, which offers configurations up to a 12th gen Intel Core i7 CPU. Now the version I have though has an i5 with a 1235U with 8 gigs of RAM, and it also packs in Google's Titan C2 chip for security, and honestly that's quite a serious upgrade, and during my testing it showed. I could run multiple Chrome tabs, I could edit photos in Lightroom, and even do a light bit of video editing in LumaFusion, which is another perk of the Chromebook Plus series because they often come bundled with software that's meant to showcase a little bit of extra performance. Now overall, I found the user experience really surprising in a good way. It juggled native Chrome OS apps really well, and Android apps ran absolutely fine as well. There were some little quirks when using the Android apps though, when it came to window sizing and format, but on the whole, if there's an app you love to use on Android, you'll probably be able to use it in some fashion here as well. And this includes Google's AI features in things like Google Photos, like its Magic Eraser, which is pretty sweet. Again, for the target user, it's going to be a really great option for casual editing of photos to send to friends and family. And just like it was super easy to remove distracting background objects on your phone, it's just as easy to do so here as well. And the only performance issues I've really encountered is with really heavy loads and multiple Chrome tabs open. As mentioned before, you can even edit videos using LumaFusion on here, and it works really quite well. Playing around with it felt smooth and responsive, but just don't try to edit 4K video shot with a dedicated camera, at least not right now. I'm not sure if it was a performance bottleneck or a codec problem, but it absolutely refused to even entertain one of my Sony a7 IV 4K files. For video taken with a phone though, it works perfectly well, and so it'll handle editing TikTok or Instagram Reels absolutely fine. Now, this laptop sports a 128GB eMMC SSD, so it's got a modest amount of storage, and it's also not the fastest one out there, so you'll probably want to invest in an external hard drive if you need to get a lot of work done. But at least there's plenty of ports to satisfy all of this as well. So ASUS really went all out with the ports on the CX34, at least from the perspective of a Chromebook. We've got two USB-C ports with Thunderbolt 4 on both sides, and they allow for fast charging and high-speed data transfer depending on your preference. There's also two USB-A ports for full compatibility, and you've also got an HDMI 1.4 port connecting to external displays, and finally a headphone jack. Seriously, you won't need a single dongle with this setup, but all I would say it would need to be complete would be an SD card slot, but based off trends, it seems like an SD card slot is reserved for pro laptops nowadays. Who knows? When it comes to longevity, ASUS claims up to 10 hours of battery life on this laptop. In my experience, it doesn't quite reach that level, and I get closer to 8 hours with a mix of web browsing, social media, using various Android apps, and the odd word processing. I mean, obviously it runs faster with more intensive tasks like photo and video editing, but I've been generally able to get a full day of work done with just moderate use. Plus, the included fast charger does juice it up quite quickly when you need it. So the big question is though, is the ASUS Chromebook Plus CX34, and perhaps the Chromebook Plus genre in general, a viable option for the future? Well, certainly it is based off what I've seen here, and the value proposition it brings. You've got powerful processing, decent battery life, and versatile design that makes it a really compelling option for not only students, but casual users and even some casual professionals who rely heavily on cloud-based tools like the G Suite. And that's been the whole experience of using the Chromebook with the latest OS version. Whilst it gets the reputation of a glorified Chrome browser, the versatility of Chrome OS has really improved over the years, making it a viable option for people who really don't need higher powered functionality like full-blown 4K video editing or high-end gaming. That being said though, the higher end components in this laptop does push the price range up a little bit compared to other Chromebooks. So the one that I'm using right now with the i5 chip, 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage Costs about $1,000 recommended retail, but there are always great deals to be had, and in fact I've seen this on more than one occasion being sold for around $600 to $650, which is an absolute steal given the performance and what you can do with it. So ultimately, the Chromebook Plus CX34 is an excellent recount of what you can do with Chrome OS. If you're a die-hard Windows or Mac user, then definitely this is not the product for you. But if you're ecosystem agnostic and perhaps you've dipped your toes into Google services and you don't need 4K editing, well, you could do far worse than to look at this Chromebook. Links will be in the description below. But what do you guys think? Would you ever try a Chromebook? Let me know why or why not in the comments section below. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to give us a like, subscribe for more, and ding the bell icon so you don't miss out. As always, stay safe out there, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.